So they messed up your cabinets and everything, and the floor lifted. You had tile floors. You end up having $10,000 worth of damage. You have a $150,000 insurance policy, but they know it's $200,000 to rebuild the home, and you insisted on $150 because you wanted to go through settlement. You're 75% insured. Adjuster comes in, he says it's $10,000 worth of damage. 10,000 times 0.75 is 7,500 minus your deductible, whatever that is. If it's $500, now you're walking out, they will give you a check for $7,000 to repair $10,000 worth of damage. And you know what people say? Insurance is a ripoff. It's not a good company. Okay? That's why it's very, very important that when you shop for insurance, you go to someone who is a professional in insurance. Someone who's going to give you the right policy for the right price dollars. Okay? But that's what I mean by being 100% insured. That's the most important thing to look for is replacement costs. Okay? What's the most important thing to look for? Huh? Yeah, you got to say this. Yes. Okay. All right. And I have to break for now.
Right.
Yes.
I want to know, like, I heard you say, like, I thought you said how, like, if your house burns down to the ground, you have to get it rebuilt. How does that work to get to the 100% coverage? Like, do you have to, is it like a payback type thing, or how does that work to get the whole?
Good question. She said if it's a total loss on the house, it burns down to the ground. Your policy, if it says $200,000 to rebuild, the insurance company and contractors, everyone will come out, they'll start estimating, come up with their numbers and bidding for the contract to rebuild the home. And after doing so, even if it costs $225,000 to rebuild, the insurance company will pay to rebuild it because they say you will have replacement costs, enough to replace it. Okay? Contractually, they have what they call enhanced or modified replacement costs. It means they go over and above. But, I'm going to have to take a pause right now because I believe another speaker has to come in and he's on a time schedule and we'll reconvene, okay, momentarily. Okay? Okay, so hold your questions, keep them fresh. I'm going to come back with more energy and we'll do it right. Okay? So, it's a pause. Time out.
The next person that's coming up is Vance Colston, and he's from County Abstract, and he'll be talking to you about the settlement process, what he does to handle a settlement. The abstract or title clerk, they actually run the settlement.
How's everybody doing today? You're to be congratulated to be exploring buying a property because it's a wonderful time to be considering it. Rates are good, prices are good, so good luck in your search for a property. My job today is to relieve stress. The settlement process has been researched, and researchers have found that can possibly be one of the 5 most stressful events in your life. It's not like the death of a loved one or a divorce or a loss of a job, but it's, it's down around number 5. But my job today is to try to remove some of the stress by giving you an idea of what happens at the settlement and also giving you some tips to try to reduce the amount of stress that you might be facing at the settlement. So if we'll just follow along in the written up program here I have. And the first thing is what is a real estate settlement? Well, basically you're going to walk into a settlement room normally, and normally there's a long table, and the buyer sits on one side, the seller sits on another side, and up at the head of the table, normally working on a computer, is the settlement officer, and his main job is working on what's called a HUD-1 settlement statement that basically attributes all the costs involved in the closing. Some are on the seller side, some are on the buyer side. What happens is you're going to be looking over at the seller side, and you're going to probably see 4 or 5 or 6 things that the seller is going to be signing. It's a small little stack of papers. But then when you look at your stack of papers, it's going to be like this. You probably have, when we print out a mortgage package today, It's normally 60 or 70 pages long. So what you're going to be pretty much doing the whole time is signing mortgage papers. And you'll be looking over to the other side and saying, oh, the seller's got it easy. Well, when you get ready to sell your house, you'll have that same situation. Okay, so basically, what do I bring to settlement? Well, the most important thing you bring is a check for the amount of money that you need at the closing table. Normally, that estimate of what you'll bring initially is given to you by your real estate agent, and then working with your mortgage officer can give you a good idea of the estimated amount you're going to need. And at the very end, the title company will be the one that actually calculates that. We can typically give you an idea of what you'll need as long as we have the papers from the mortgage company that tells us what the costs are. And we also need information from the listing office that tells us what the taxes are and what the different charges that are involved in the settlement. So typically, a day before settlement, we're in a position to give you an idea of what you need. We will typically talk with your agent about what's required, and then they can tell you how much money to bring. The money that you bring is in the form of a certified check. We can't take, you can't bring your checkbook and just write out a check for the amount of money you'll need. We need a bank check or something of that nature, and the check is made payable to the title company. I just had a settlement, I guess, about a week ago where the check was made out to the mortgage company. Well, that doesn't help us. I've also seen checks made out to the real estate agency. So you got to keep in mind, let's make the check out to the title company. If you're not sure who the title company is, the safe way of doing it is make the check out to yourself. And that way you can bring the check to settlement, and all you'll have to do is endorse it over to the title company, and that way you won't need to worry about who the heck to make it out to. The second thing we typically like to get is the homeowner's insurance, and it was good that Tim was just up here talking about that. Very often what happens is the insurance agent forwards the insurance policy information to the mortgage company. What happens to us at settlement is normally we do not get that information. So the mortgage company doesn't give us a copy of the policy, and they typically don't tell us whether it's paid or not. So the safest way for you to do it is I've got to, at the settlement table, make sure that you have homeowner's insurance and also that it's been paid for a year in advance. So if you pay your policy in advance, what you want is a receipted payment from your insurance agent. If you're going to be paying it at settlement, what we need is a bill. And if you're dealing with a Nationwide or an Allstate, it's very difficult if we just have, a Nationwide policy and it's $600. I don't know which Nationwide agent to pay it to. So what you want is an actual bill from your agent, and that way we'll be able to properly pay it for you at closing. Next thing you'll need is there's something in the United States now called the Patriot Act. And we have to basically make sure you are who you are at the settlement table. Typical way we do that is with a current Pennsylvania driver's license. If you have an expired license, that is not proper identification. So when you're at the settlement table, make sure that you have a current picture ID, driver's license. If you don't drive, basically you can get a non-driver identification through the state. So make sure you have that. And then the last thing you need to be aware of is before settlement, your mortgage company is going to give you what's called a mortgage commitment. And it's going to say to you that, hey, we're going to approve you for this loan, subject to certain conditions, some of which may be that you'll have to pay off some credit cards. That's the normal situation. If that's a requirement of you at the settlement table, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you bring these credit card statements to closing, because the title officer is not going to know who to pay the money to. So if you owe Visa $550 and you have to pay it off at closing, make sure you bring your statement that tells the title officer, okay, here's where you send it, and here's my account number and all that good information. Okay, so we got you set for the settlement. Now, we're going to get an idea how long this is going to take. And typically, your settlements will take a little bit more than an hour because you're dealing with actually two mortgages. When you're, one of the reasons you're here is there are grant programs that are available to you, and typically we're explaining more documents at your closings than we are at some of the other ones that we're dealing with. But it should take about an hour or a little bit more. And basically, I said what you're doing is you're signing papers, and this is a good old time on the other side of the table. Okay, what happens at the settlement? You're looking at the stack of papers, you're signing away. Basically, the important thing that the seller is signing is the deed to the house. At the settlement table, you should get a copy of that deed. I'm going to show you what it looks like a little bit later in some of the papers that we're going to go over. The final figures are calculated on the settlement sheet, and then what happens is you'll review that with either your mortgage company representative or your real estate agent. And then one of the things that we very often forget is you want to make sure you get keys to the property from the seller. I can tell you the number of settlements that we've done where everybody parts all happy and everything, and you're heading over to the house and all of a sudden, whoops, I forgot to get the keys. You want to get the keys from him before you go. And you might take this sheet with you when you go to settlement and kind of give you some cues here as to what should be happening. How many of you are looking in Chester City for a home? Okay. One of the things you want to do is you want to make sure that you've called for utilities. Chester Water services a lot of the properties down here in this area. You really should be calling them before settlement and letting them know that you're going to be the new buyer at closing. Once you have your mortgage commitment, you know you're getting your mortgage, and you've set a settlement date, you can then think about getting utilities turned over into your name. And the Chester Water is the one thing in our area that typically buyers forget to call on, and it's rather important you do that. Okay, let's look at some of the things that we talked about signing. We've got a little brochure here of our company, County Abstract Company. You may want to look through that, but the next thing that we are looking at here is a HUD 1. Okay, this is the settlement statement that I talked about that your title agent is working on at the end of the table. Basically, what we're doing is we're using computers to generate all these, all the information on these, and the one part, your side is on the left-hand side. So all the numbers on the left-hand side are the buyers, all the numbers on the right-hand side are the sellers. And the number that you're looking at is the one that's most important to you is line 303. Okay, so if you want to remove stress from your life, 303 tells you how much money you need for settlement. And hopefully it's, it's a little bit less than what you were told to bring. Typically what happens is when we give you an estimate of closing the day before, we're going to tell you to bring a little bit more than you actually will need at the closing table. And what happens is we'll actually cut a check at the settlement table back to you for any amount of overage that you brought. So that's what you want to look at first. When you're looking at the settlement sheet, look at line 303, gives you an idea of what you need. In this case, our buyer is getting a significant amount of money back. He was getting $770 back from closing. So that's pretty nice to know, hey, I didn't need any money for closing, I'm getting money back. Let's just go through the left-hand side, give you an idea of what some of the costs that we're talking about are. The first thing you can see is the contract sale price on line 101 was $124,000. And then we look to line 103. 103 is the total of all the costs that are on the second page of the settlement sheet. So at this point, what happens is we always turn over the sheet and we look at the second page and we look at the left-hand column again and we look at what those costs are. The costs in the 800 series and the 900 series and the 1000 series are all costs from the mortgage company. Okay, so you can see what some of those costs would be. The 900 series basically is the where we're paying your homeowner's insurance, as you can see on line 903. And also in line 901 is the interest. What that number is basically the mortgage company wants to be paid typically on the first day of the month. So if you're settling in a month that's earlier than when we're in the first of the month, what they're going to do is they're going to charge you interest only to get you up to the first of the following month. What a lot of people like to do, one of the few things that you can control in order to make your settlement costs as low as possible, is to settle towards the end of the month. If you settle towards the end of the month, your interest expense from that date up to the first of the following month is going to be less than it would be if you settled early in the month. The only problem with that is, and how many of you are in an apartment right now? Okay, when you buy your house, you're probably thinking, I really want to settle towards the end of the month because my rent's running month to month. So ideally what I'd like to do is probably settle the last Friday of the month and then, move out into the property over the weekend. Or I'm going to settle the last day of the month, and that's going to make my interest costs really low. The problem with that is that's when everybody else wants to settle. Now remember we said that the average settlement takes about an hour. When you're at a title company and the title company has 7 settlements scheduled for that day, and there's one closer doing those settlements, and you want to talk about some stress here. Let's say you have a 4 o'clock settlement, and 2 settlements before is taking a long time. Instead of that 1 hour, it's taking 2 or 3 hours. And now all of a sudden, it's not 4 o'clock anymore that it looks like your settlement's going to be starting. It looks more like it's going to be 6 o'clock. And what happens then is that the title officer, in doing your closing, has to be in contact with the mortgage company. And basically, we have to fax settlement sheets. They have to be reviewed, and authority is given to the to the title officer by that mortgage company in Timbuktu that it's all right to disperse. You're all right with what you have, and you can disperse. If you're after hours and that mortgage company representative is no longer there, the problem for the title company is we don't know whether we have proper authority or not to close, to disperse funds. Now you have a seller that's sitting at the settlement table, and he says, okay, well, are you going to give me my money? And the title officer is saying, well, I'm not sure whether I have proper authority from this mortgage lender to disperse funds, so I really can't do it today. Then what the seller may be saying is, okay, well, if you can't give me the money, then I really can't give the keys to my property to the buyer. Now, what are we talking about here? Let me go back to where, all right, that's where the stress comes in. So a better way to do this would be to say, okay, maybe I don't settle the last Friday of the month, maybe Thursday. And Thursday, that same title officer that got 7 settlements scheduled on a Friday, maybe he's only got 2 settlements scheduled on the Thursday. All right? And then maybe what I want to do is just schedule it sometime in the early afternoon, and I'll be stress-free. I won't have to worry about what's whappening in those other settlements that were occurring beforehand. So that would be my suggestion to you, that you settle maybe not the last Friday of the month, settle the last Thursday of the month, last Wednesday of the month, or don't settle the last day of the month, settle the second to the last day of the month, or the third to the last day of the month. It'll cost you a little bit more in interest, but it may relieve a lot of anxiety on your part. Then the rest of the settlement sheet, we have the escrows down in line 1,000. You can see some of the settlement costs for the title company in the 1100 series. You can see recording costs in the 1200 series. This is where we charge to record the deed and we charge to record the mortgage for you. At the bottom, all these costs are totaled. Then what happens is we'll go back to the front of the sheet again, and we see the total reflected again in this line 103. And then this 108, 109, 110, what happens is you always pay your taxes in advance. So what you're doing in that area is you're reimbursing the seller for taxes he's already paid in advance for you. you're reimbursing him that portion of the year that you're getting a free ride. You're not getting a free ride anymore, you're reimbursing him. In the 200 series, you can see the mortgages that were involved and also your escrow money. What happens is when you draw an agreement of sale, the real estate agent is going to ask for an escrow deposit. What happens is at settlement, that money that has been kept in the realtor's escrow account is pulled out and it's brought to the settlement table and handed to the title officer. So that's, in this case, there was $1,000 earnest money deposit with the agreement of sale. Our buyer is getting a $26,666 mortgage, 126 rather, and then Media Fellowship was granting a second mortgage in the amount of $2,700. Because of the time of the year that the settlement occurred, basically the tax bills were out, but the seller wasn't, or the tax bills weren't out yet. So the seller was giving a credit to the buyer for a couple of the tax bills that were showing in line 210 and 211. 213, there was a seller assist. So the seller in many of these programs can give you a credit towards closing costs. You want to talk with your real estate agent that you're working with when you're drawing your agreement of sale about that. And then when we get down to the bottom, we could see what happened. It was a happy result. The buyer had $1,000 down, and he, in this case, he got $770 back. So he's able to buy the property with a very low down payment. Next page that I want to show you is a deed. And you see a deed whenever you see the wording "this indenture," it tells you you're probably looking at a deed. So I got the first page of a deed, just to give you an idea of what that looks like. You should leave the settlement table with a copy of that deed, which the title company is then going to record in media. Okay. Then the next thing I want to show you is a mortgage. And basically the mortgage is the instrument which you're borrowing money from a mortgage company. This mortgage gives the right to the mortgage company to, it secures your property, and it gives the right to the mortgage company to take your property back if you go into foreclosure and there's a sheriff's sale. So basically, this is collateralizing your real estate as security for the money that is being loaned to you by that mortgage company. And then what I have is, I told you that there was a Media Fellowship grant. This was the mortgage that Media Fellowship recorded. The CCIP would also record a mortgage as a second lien for the grant that you're getting under this program. And then the last thing I have to show you is a note, okay? The note is your personal guarantee that you're going to repay the money that you're borrowing. The most important thing, though, on the note is your interest rate. So if you look down here under number 2, you can see interest. That's where your interest rate is. The mortgage, surprisingly, doesn't tell you what the interest rate is. The note's the instrument that does. So that's really important to you. What I've done is I've made a copy of the whole note so that you can read through it, because I feel that that's a very important document. And if you read through it, it'll give you a good idea of what your responsibilities are in repaying the loan. The one thing I want to draw to your attention is, as I said, there's a lot of papers you have to sign. The mortgage is typically, an FHA mortgage is 10 or 11 pages long. Some conventional mortgage are 16 pages long. If you're sitting at the settlement table and you're going to decide that I'm going to read every page, your settlement's going to take longer than an hour. So my suggestion to you is that if it's very important for you to understand what you're signing and what you're reading beforehand, you may want to get a blank copy of the mortgage. You might want to get a blank copy of the note beforehand if you really want to read it. Your protection, though, is if you look at the bottom of this note and the mortgage and that I gave you, you'll see that this note is a multi-state fixed rate note. It's a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac uniform instrument. When you see that wording, basically, it's your security that, hey, this is a standard instrument, I can't change it because if I make any changes to it, it's no longer a uniform instrument, and the mortgage lender probably will not be able to sell the loan in the secondary market. So what it is basically you're going to sign this form exactly the way it is. It's important you understand what it is, but your security is, hey, it's exactly the same as a lot of the other documents, or 100% almost of the documents that other buyers in your circumstances are signing. So you're either going to see a multi-state fixed rate note, Fannie Mae uniform instrument, or you're going to see the wording Pennsylvania FHA mortgage. If you're going FHA, you're going to see that wording down the bottom. And if it's an FHA mortgage, again, it's going to be a standard form. Basically, you know, if you really feel a need to read it beforehand, get a blank copy the day before selling. Okay, let's see if I got anything else in here. I think we pretty much covered everything I wanted to. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Is it a standard company that the real estate agent uses or the mortgage company uses for title in?
Basically, it's your right to shop for whoever you want to use as a title company. The title industry in Pennsylvania is controlled by the State Insurance Commission. Basically, title insurance rates are fixed by the State Insurance Commissioner. 90% of these title companies that are operating in the state would charge exactly the same rate. You are beneficiaries of a special program with the title insurance. You're entitled to a 75%, it's a 25% discount basically on the title insurance. So we're required by the state, any of you purchasing through this program gets a 25% discount on their title insurance, which is not a bad deal. And that's controlled by the State Insurance Commissioner. So between title insurance company and title insurance company, it should be exactly the same rate. It's a little bit different than homeowners insurance where, you know, Nationwide's going to charge one rate, Allstate's going to charge another rate. Title insurance is pretty much going to be the same. The advantage of using the title company with the realtor that you're using is there's a familiarity between the two entities, and they work together normally a little bit better than you would if it was an outside agent. But basically, it's your right to shop. That's what I'm doing. That's one of my jobs before settlement, make sure that we're applying the proper title insurance rate to that particular settlement. Okay?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, what is the interest rate on FHA loans?
Excuse me?
Interest rates
Yeah.
on the FHA loan?
FHA loan? You're going to have a speaker this afternoon that can talk to you about that. That's not something that I control. We just have the documents that are sent to us. What would you say FHA rates right now, or Jamie, or about 6%? About 6% right now, which is pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. I can remember the days when interest rates were 21%. And basically, we were showing houses not based on how nice the houses were, but what the FHA rates back then were assumable. So what you were doing is you were showing properties with 8% FHA mortgages. And if it had an 8% rate on it, man, it didn't matter what the house looked like. If I could assume that mortgage, that was a good deal. Any other questions? So as I said, you guys are dealing in a very, very good market right now. Yeah?
What's a closing protection letter?
Closing protection letter basically is a letter which says that if again, it's a state-regulated rate of $35. And it ensures to the mortgage lender that the title underwriter is going to stand behind his title agency. If the title agent screws up the settlement, and if for some reason your mortgage is not saleable because of something that was done at settlement, the title underwriter is basically on the hook for that particular closing.